Did you know only 6% of people are getting enough fiber? That's why Quaker created Fiber February, a month-long movement to show your gut a little more love. It's like dry January, only easier and more delicious. Quaker has over 100 delicious options that are a good source of fiber. So go buy Quaker Oats today and join the Fiber February movement for a healthy gut.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an Enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Hi, we're sisters, Amy and Nancy Harrington, the founders of the Passionistas Project, where we believe that every woman deserves to be seen, heard, and celebrated. Our mission is simple but powerful: to give women a platform to tell their unfiltered stories, the stories that inspire, challenge, and break the silence around what it really means to follow your passions. On each episode, we have conversations about courage, authenticity, and the messy, beautiful journey of living life unapologetically. Today's guest turned heartbreak into healing. Sarah Willoughby transformed her own journey through infertility, grief, and upheaval into a powerful path of self-love and alignment. In her best-selling book, Infertility Saved My Life, she shared how healing from the inside out led her to the life and family she once thought were impossible. Now she helps women connect with themselves and creates lives that truly fit. So please welcome Sarah Willoughby. We're so excited to share your story with our listeners today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's a real pleasure. So thank you.
Sarah, what are you most passionate about?
Helping people live with authenticity. It was a journey that I discovered later in life, let's say. I think the people that are coming through now are a little bit more awakened, and that inspires me and excites me. But just really connecting with self, with the truth of who we are, and going on that journey of healing and self-love so that we can all be our best version and give back to this incredible planet that we call home.
That's beautiful. So you say that came to you later in life. So let's talk about earlier in life. What was your childhood like? Where did you grow up? And what were your experiences like as a kid?
So I think I was a bit of an all-knowing child, but I grew up in a family home where, intuition was not spoken about. It was very pragmatic. I had a very educational background where, we believed that you went to university, and I spent 6 years studying at university. I went into the corporate world and I did all of the things. And so I spent my whole life in my mind, not in my heart. And that was always going against my soul's journey, but I didn't understand that. And I would have a lot of intuitive moments and downloads and visions, even as a young child, but I didn't understand what that was. And so as a teenager, I shut that down because it scared me. And it wasn't until I almost lost my life going through my infertility journey, trying to have a second child, and the IVF cycle went disastrously wrong, that I was given the almighty universal kick up the bum, as I love to call it, where it was like, you can't live life like this anymore. There is so much more to life than what you are doing, and the living a life by the expectations that other people have of you and you have for yourself, but are not making your soul happy. So it was a difficult journey, but it was the greatest gift that I could ever have been given, one that I'm exceptionally grateful for.
Yeah. We want to dive deeper into your infertility journey in a minute, but let's talk a little bit about what you mentioned briefly is your studies. What drew you to study at the University of Plymouth, and your postgraduate degrees and your early career? Tell us just a little bit about that path.
I think I always had a real desire to connect deeply with people. I was a very affectionate child. I loved hugging people. I always saw beyond people's behavior. I always wanted to see the best in people. I'm a very sensitive soul. Sometimes that's a gift, sometimes that's a curse. I'm sure you understand that. But I didn't know any different because I my father had worked very, very hard to put himself through education, and to improve the life that he could provide for us growing up, which I was exceptionally grateful for. So it was almost like it was this given that I would go to university. I went to one of the most academic schools in the UK, where lots and lots of people went to Oxford and Cambridge University. And so it was this given that I would follow that path and do the same. And without, sounding arrogant, I am intelligent, I have a good mind, and I wanted to use that. And I'm curious about the world. So it wasn't like it was completely out of sync with who I am, but it was the only thing that was kind of put on the table of this is how you live life. So I went to University of Plymouth to do a business degree. I spent 4 years doing that. I then went into the corporate world, and at the same time, I did my professional qualifications in HR. And I loved working with people. I loved helping people resolve their professional and personal issues. But I really didn't enjoy all the trade union stuff, the legal negotiations, the hard things that, the disciplinary situations. I really struggled with that because I found it really jarring, and I didn't like the corporate culture in terms of maybe people not always being truthful about what was really going on. So I could always read between the lines, but I didn't have that proof that there was other stuff going on. So my soul was always encouraging me to leave the corporate world, and that sort of clashed with my secondary infertility journey. But I was too scared because I had a good job. It paid really well. There was that level of, I'm living the American dream. I have it all. I can go on beautiful holidays. I live in a beautiful home. I have the car. I have the things. But it wasn't making my soul happy, and I didn't know what else to do. So it wasn't until I had my health issues that I really just stepped out of fear, and I just embraced the truth of life is short. Life is incredibly short. We just get this one chance in this human body to be able to live our best life. And now I had no more excuses.
So tell us about that health journey. What happened?
So I had a beautiful little boy really quickly, so pretty much honeymoon baby. And even though I had an underlying medical condition, so I've got PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, I believed that I was cured, that it was all going to be fine if I've had my baby really quickly. He was born 2 months pram. That was pretty challenging. But aside from that, he was happy, healthy, and I wanted to have 4 children really close together in age so I could go back to my corporate career. And it didn't turn out like that. I went through a lot of miscarriage and grief and trauma, and I ended up being advised that IVF was the best solution for me, the best chance to complete my family. And I naively thought that I was living in the UK at the time, naively thought that going over to Norway to do that and try and make it into a holiday at the same time to take the stress and pressure out of it, of the awful 2-week wait, and not having everybody asking, are you pregnant? Are you pregnant? Are you pregnant? Would help. And they had really amazing success rates. It was the same team working with you all the time, and it felt like the perfect fit. But my body did not like the drugs, and my body slowly started to shut down, and my body went into ovarian overstimulation, but then it became ovarian hyperstimulation, and which is very, very rare. And I ended up in ICU, basically fighting for my life. My body started to shut down. There was nothing the doctors could do for me. And it was just a waiting game. Either my body will reverse the process and will start to heal, or I will end up with heart failure and probably die. And I was sort of at the stage before heart failure where I had an enlarged heart. I had fluid on my lungs. I couldn't breathe. I'd put on a ton of weight. Fluid was just filled up my body. I was in the most excruciating pain that I've never, ever experienced again. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And I just had to go within. because I knew that this was an inside job. It was a mental, spiritual, emotional journey, and I was on it by myself with the support of the doctors, of course. But it was very, very confronting. And I had moments of watching my 3-year-old son walk out of the hospital doors, not knowing whether I would ever see him again. He went back to the UK with my mother-in-law, and I didn't know, will I ever see my little boy again? Will I ever raise this beautiful boy that I have been so privileged and so blessed to have? And I realized at that point that nothing was important. Nothing, all the corporate dramas, all the worries about money, none of that mattered, right? Because my little boy might grow up without his mom. And that was so very, very humbling. And I'm so grateful for that journey, because without that journey, I wouldn't be the mum that I am today. I would have gone back into the corporate world. I would have tried to, have my 4 kids really quickly, and I wouldn't have the relationship that I have with them. I wouldn't feel so much fulfillment in a heart space that I have for that role as mum.
Yeah. Talk about finding that strength. I mean, it's all on you. The doctors can't do anything. It's all on you to get better. And I imagine thinking about your son was probably where the strength came from. But talk about that and how you did it. What did you do?
So fortunately for me, I had learned meditation. So while I was on my journey trying to have another child, I'd really had to deal with the stress and pressure of that situation, as well as the pressure I was under at work. My job was very demanding. And I had learned meditation and mindfulness. And I can honestly say, without that, I wouldn't be here, because there were so many moments that I had to literally breathe through, breath by breath, moment by moment. The pain was unbelievable. And there were days when I would wake up, because I was having to take sleeping tablets to actually get any rest. And I was very averse to that. And I was always scared. I'm not going to wake up in the morning. So I didn't want to take them, but I had to. And I would wake up and I'd be like, I'm still here. I can still feel this pain. Have I got the strength to get through this? Can I deal with this? But then I would think about my son and I'd be like, he didn't ask for this. He didn't deserve this. He's 3 years old. He's the most incredible human being. He's now 20. Very, very blessed to have him as one of my greatest teachers. He inspires me every day. He teaches me so much about the world. So there was always a plan so much greater than what I was living in that moment. And that's been something that I've taken forward in my life. You cannot see the whole picture now, but it will all be revealed at some point. You've just got to be patient. Piece by piece, the jigsaw puzzle will fill up and you will see exactly why this is happening and what you're going to learn from this.
Wow. So how long did that medical journey take for you to get healthy again? And how did your life shift after that?
It's actually quite a quick process. From the point that your body starts to heal, it really happens quite quickly, the healing process. And I was really lucky that I had no long-term damage. So I was in hospital, I think, for about 10 days in the end. And then they kicked me out because they had a patient that was coming in and needed my bed, and she was way sicker than me. So I went back, flew back to the UK, literally just having had my catheter removed, with all this fluid just exiting my body like crazy, not even knowing if I was going to be able to board the plane, because I needed to go to the toilet that much before I could even get on the plane. And I was in a wheelchair, and everybody's like, what's going on over here? I was somebody of interest on that flight home. And I then had a period of time off work, but only actually a couple of weeks. I was told by the doctors, you're not ready to go back to work. Your body is still healing. But mentally, I needed to go back because I needed to shift the story. And I was like, the longer I stay off work, the less likely I am to go back. I'll go into stress leave, or it will be too much to face people, because everybody's going to think I'm pregnant, because my tummy was still massive. They know that I've been away. I'm going to have all the questions. I just need to face this. And it was actually, ironically and weirdly, the best thing for me, because I realized that other people were still living life. They still had problems. They needed my help. let's go back, let's deal with this. But at the same time, also really kind of focused me on wanting to start a new life somewhere else. And so the process of emigrating to Australia had already been put on the table. And I was even more determined that this was what was going to happen. And the universe just conspired in our favor and everything happened super quickly. But before we emigrated here, I did go back to Norway. So 2 or 3 months later, I went back to Norway. I had a frozen embryo transfer, totally different process, totally safe to do. And I fell pregnant with twins. And I was like, this is why this happened this way. It always has this romantic notion about twins. I wanted to be a twin mum. I'm sure twin parents are like, oh my God, you have no idea how hard it is. But I was so excited by that prospect. And we were coming out to Australia as a family of 5 and a whole new world ahead of us. And then, unfortunately, in the 8-week period from getting our visa and emigrating over here, I lost one of the twins. I then lost the other twin, came out as a family of 3, surrendered, said, okay, I've got to be happy with my life as it is. Look at living life with my son and surrender to what is supposed to be for me. And then something amazing happened. But if you have any questions, I will stop talking for now. But
Tell us what amazing happened. Just keep going.
all right. So within 6 weeks of moving out to Australia, we had no jobs. We had money to survive on for 6 months. We had no plan B if it wasn't going to work out. I fell pregnant naturally with my daughter, who is now 15. Mm-hmm. And it was a really difficult journey because it wasn't an easy pregnancy. And there were lots of moments when every week I thought I was going to lose her because I was bleeding. But every week that went by was a week closer to me holding my baby in my arms. And when she was born and I looked into her eyes, it was like, my life is complete. And I just remember her looking back at me with such love. And I had such gratitude for her and for the life that I knew was, coming. And then 4 years after that, I was very, very blessed to have another little girl. And she is 11. So I am a mum of 3 beautiful, incredible, very wise, very spiritually open, all-knowing children who will go on and leave a far greater legacy than I will ever leave. And I know that that's a big part of my role too.
Wow, wow, wow. When Julie DeLuca Collins introduced us, she said, she has a really good story. You really should talk to her. And she wasn't wrong. So was it during this whole journey that you learned to follow your intuition, and what does that look like for you now?
I think I was already on that path, but I hadn't been brave enough to fully step into it. So leaving behind this life in the UK that was, all our family, all our friends, financial security, great jobs, and throwing everything up in the air and starting again was the most liberating, empowering experience I've ever had. And it was this moment of arriving in Melbourne and knowing in my heart that I was coming home and just feeling peace in my body for the very first time in my life. And I couldn't explain it, but whenever I'm in self-doubt, I go back to that moment of lying on my bed in the fetal position going, thank you, this feels right. And I'm not saying that life here has been easy. It hasn't. We've had so many challenges over the years. And last year was a year that pushed and pulled me and poked me and prodded me in ways I didn't even know I was capable of working through. But that experience of coming out here and really stepping into the unknown and being prepared to take that leap of faith and seeing how it unfolded with ease and grace and love and joy is always the thing that I come back to in my moments of doubt. We all have self-doubt, and I can just go back into that moment, into that feeling and say, no, you've got this. Like, keep going, keep trusting, keep believing, and it will be okay in whatever version that looks like, whatever that looks like, it will be okay. It might not look like you wanted it to, but it will always be what you need it to be.
So you wrote a book somewhere along this journey. You wrote a book called Infertility
Yes.
Saved My Life. So tell us when within this journey that happened and what inspired you to share your story publicly.
Yeah, so this is my beautiful book. And it was a journey, a real journey. It took me about 5 years to write that book. So I was working with a beautiful American spiritual guide and mentor who's actually quite famous. And he said to me one day, "You know that you're a writer." And I said, "Yes, I just don't know what to write about." And he said, "Well, when you're ready, I can give you the contact details of a place that will publish your work, publish articles." And I said, "Well, I'm ready. So give me the information, please." And he did. And he said, "But don't get excited because your first article probably won't be written. I won't be published, sorry. And so just keep going. Just keep putting your articles out there." And so I wrote this beautiful article inspired by Dr. Brené Brown about the power of vulnerability. And I didn't expect it to be published. And when it was, and I got the email through, and then my Facebook page went a little bit viral because it had an audience of 9 million people on this website that sort of spread people's words and insight. I was very, very vulnerable. So that wasn't lost on me. So that was the beginning of my writing journey. So putting my work out into the world, being vulnerable, being brave, sharing who I truly was. And my words resonated with people. And I was like, there's something here and I need to keep doing this. So for a long time, I wrote and published articles. And then that led me to doing a co-authored book in 2020, where I had a chapter in a book and shared my story there. And that was really liberating. And then I was like, no, you need to be brave enough to write your own story. So I naively thought that I'd get it done in about 3 to 12 months. And then life happens, COVID hit, my dad died, my marriage ended, lots of big things all at once. But I wrote through that journey. And I remember Deepak Chopra giving me some of the best advice and saying, you just need to write something every day. It doesn't matter if it's a paragraph, if it's even just one sentence, you have to commit to writing every day. And I did. And every day that turned into my book. And then I was offered a publishing contract with a New York publisher, which I wasn't expecting. It's very hard to get that. So that happened. And my book was released into the world beginning of 2023. And I was like, oh my God, my next baby has been birthed into the world. And I feel even more vulnerable than I did when my first article was published. So it's been quite the journey. And I'm proud of that journey because a lot of people are amazing writers, but don't have the courage to keep going and to put their words into the world. And as Les Brown says, the richest place in the world is the graveyard because that's where so many hopes and dreams and words of wisdom die alongside those people. And I didn't want to be that person that had something to share with the world and was too scared to do that.
So glad you made that choice. What did you learn about yourself from writing the book? Was there something that surprised you?
I think I learnt a new level of vulnerability. It was very cathartic and healing writing it. I did a lot of crying and a lot of releasing. I think I also learned how resilient you have to be in the process. There's a lot of editing, there's a lot of setbacks, there's a lot of no's. And I just kept believing and kept trusting and kept putting it out there. And I've actually just had the feedback from my next book. I'm writing a book about grief. And I've just had the feedback from the same editor who edited my first book. And she's given me beautiful feedback, but there's a lot that needs to be changed, which is her job. And I'm grateful for that. But I'm in that space of like, oh, why did I sign up to do this again? This is so much work. But I know that I'll work through it and I'll process it and I'll eventually get that out into the world as well. So it's the journey, as I know you both understand with the writing that you do.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when did you decide to start sharing your knowledge with people one-on-one with coaching sessions, and what kind of support do you offer them?
It was something that I was always doing in the corporate world, working in HR. I was always coaching people in various ways at all levels of the organization. So it seemed like it was a natural fit to do that when I moved out here. I set up my own business, initially doing Reiki. So I'm a Reiki healer and an energy healer. And that was how it started. And then I realized that I had so much more to offer people, and that coaching was a way to reach a different audience, maybe more of a corporate audience, or those people that were in that space of knowing that there was something more to life, more to the 9 to 5, more to the human experience, that we believe that there was a sixth sense maybe going on, but they couldn't quite name what that was. So I was able to integrate the healing and the coaching with people both online and in person. And that really grew during COVID because I had just been seeing people face to face. But that was, I guess, quite limiting. It's a beautiful, Australia is an incredible country, but in terms of the numbers of people we have here, it's quite limited. So to be able to open up that global network and connections was a real gift that came out of COVID. That was when I did my very first podcast, was during COVID in 2020. And I was always somebody who was terrified of public speaking growing up. So it was like a huge step for me. Yeah. So I find it really ironic that when I look back at all those times that I was terrified at school of standing up and talking in front of people, that the universe has just thrown it back in my face and said, now you need to be a speaker, Sarah. And I'm like, really? You could have tweaked anything else for me and I would have been totally on board. But this?
Well, I'm glad that you've overcome that, because your story and your mission need to be spread around the world. Infertility and miscarriage are still two topics that people really don't discuss. And I'm curious why do you think that is? And what can we do to make them more accessible to people so that people who are dealing with it aren't dealing with it alone and have a better support system?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. I think what I've realized is there is so much silence, stigma, and shame surrounding it. So, particularly as a woman, and I'm sure men feel the same too, but you have that biological urge often, not for everybody, but a lot of women do, to be a mum. And so you see everybody else doing it. And when it's that one part of your body that's not working properly, it's hard. It's really, really hard. And it's also because of the area of the body. There's a lot of kind of like, oh, we don't talk about that. No. And so it's dealt with behind closed doors in silence. That's how it was for me. I didn't know anybody else that had had a miscarriage. I was the first person in my friendship group to try to have a baby, but also the first person to have a miscarriage and to have multiple miscarriages. And even when my friends were having miscarriages, they didn't even talk about it, yet they knew that I'd had one. So there is so much work that needs to be done to bring it into the light so that we realize how many people are affected by this globally, and that it's just another part of the body that needs help. If it was the brain, if it was you broken your leg, everybody would be talking about it, not a problem. But because it's where it is, I think that's part of the issue. And the more that we can talk about it, the more people realize they're not alone, the more voice we can give to it, the easier that journey will be for people, because it's incredibly, incredibly hard. And until you've been on it, as with anything in life, you can't understand it.
And you said something just now about women feeling like their body is broken, right? I mean, I think that's where everyone goes to, like, it's my fault somehow that my body's doing this. So how do you help women cultivate the self-love and reconnect with their inner selves and get to that point where they know that they, first of all, have control over their body, but also that it's not their fault, you know?
Yeah, I think it's really focusing on mindset and the stories that we tell ourselves, the things that we say to ourselves. We have between 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. And 90% of those are negative, 80% are repeated from the day before. We don't really stand much of a chance. Every morning we wake up, we're already facing a bit of a losing battle. So we have to really be very mindful about what we're saying to ourselves, because when what we say to ourselves changes, then physiologically how our body responds also changes. The two are not separate, even though from a medical perspective, they often are treated as separate things. So for me, it was about actually reconnecting with my body, getting still, learning the wisdom of my body, the cues and the messages that were being given to me all the time. So I encourage people to go out into nature and to breathe probably properly for the first time all day, and to just get still and to ground and to quieten the negative self-talk. It's a daily practice. It's not something that can happen overnight. I think even just little words like yet can be very, very helpful. I'm not pregnant versus I'm not pregnant yet can shift that internal dialogue that we have playing and going on in the background all the time. Surrounding yourself with a tribe of people who really understand what you're going through, because often those people that need to support us are not our family, our partner, our best friend. They're people who are living the same experience, who are also scared and vulnerable and feel body shame. But for me, my journey was that I was expecting my body to give me the greatest gift on earth, yet I was so unkind to my body, what I was saying about it. I was so critical. I didn't like my body. I could have named 100 different things that were wrong with my body, because I hadn't learned to connect with the truth of my body and how amazing it is. And that was one of the other greatest gifts that I got when I was lying in ICU, was like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to actually turn this around and go, how incredible that my body healed, how incredible that it got me through the most difficult, precarious situation. And it's given me the chance to live again. I'm gonna be grateful for that, and I'm going to celebrate that, and I'm going to help other women to change the relationship that they have with their body, step by step, moment by moment. That's what it is, moment by moment. You catch yourself saying something negative, you go, okay, I've caught myself, I've noticed. That's better than where I was at yesterday.
So powerful. What's the question we're not asking?
Ooh, well, that's a good question in itself. I think let's talk about grief maybe a little bit on that journey too, and grief in life. And I think one of the things that I realized during COVID was how much grief is a part of our lives, and we don't recognize that. And grief in our body is such a low vibration, but it's so necessary. And it's something that is a universal experience, but it's another topic that we don't talk about. So there is a huge grieving process in the fertility journey that I didn't even acknowledge until I was writing my book about it. I didn't realize that I wasn't just grieving for the fact that I couldn't have another child. I was grieving for this life that I had believed was for me, this life that I saw. I was grieving for the moment of being called mum again. I was grieving for the moment of maybe having grandchildren. I was grieving for the moment of my son welcoming a new sibling into the world. I was grieving on so many different levels, and I didn't know that, and I didn't name that, and I didn't hold space for that. I just pushed on and pushed on and pushed on. And if women, men listening to this who are on that journey, or you know somebody who's on that journey and you want to support them, hold space for them when they're going on this journey, and know that they're probably grieving, and it's not a journey with an end point. It's not a journey that you know that it's all going to be okay in the end, because for some people it's not. For some people it's not. And so there's a huge amount of vulnerability and surrender and letting go, and having to be resilient, and having to step back up, and having to go to the next appointment and hear the next lot of bad news, and grieving every single time you walk out of the doctor's appointment and being told that there is something else wrong with your body. So grief, I think, is something that just needs to be acknowledged generally in this journey, but in life in general. And I think people are still grieving after COVID. I see it here in Australia. I see how disconnected people still are from themselves, how sad they are. And it's hard at times to witness. But again, if we talk about it, if we shine a light on it, if we hold space for each other, it makes it so much easier.
Absolutely. So important. Thank you. So how can people get in touch with you if they would like to work with you?
SarahWilloughby.com is my website. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, Sarah Willoughby Australia. People are very welcome to book a free consultation with me, 30-minute chat, where you can work out where you're at in life and where you want to be, and see whether we're a good fit for each other. My books are available through all the online in all the online websites and bookstores. And yeah, just if you feel that anything I've said has resonated, feel free to drop me an email, say hi. I love connecting with people. It's a privilege and an absolute pleasure to do this work. I feel very blessed to be able to work in this space and to be on this soulful journey every day.
All right, so we have what's usually one last 2-part question, but for you, I'm going to make it a 3-part question.
Okay, I'm concentrating.
An interview span, multiple questions. What's your dream for yourself? What is your dream for your beautiful children? And what is your dream for women?
My dream for myself is to keep being brave enough, to keep having the courage every single day, to listen to my heart and my intuition, and to be able to filter out the normal distractions that we all face. And I know that by doing that, that will take me to the most beautiful, abundant, fulfilling, heart-filled life that I could ever imagine. I know that the best is just yet to come. My dream for my children is for them to be able to live with authenticity, for them to be themselves, for them to have the best relationship that they can ever have with themselves, knowing that if they can do that, then everything else will fall into place. And my dream for women is that they see the true beauty in who they are. There is still so much inequality in this world. When I was at university, I wrote an article about the pay gap that existed in the UK at that point. So I was 20 when I wrote that article, and I cannot believe all these years later, and I'm nearly 48, that we are still facing even just that alone, let alone all the other inequalities that exist as women and other, groups in society. So my vision for women is that we within ourselves know that we are one drop in the ocean, but together we are the ocean. We have more power than we can ever imagine. And it does all start with us believing in living our truth and inspiring other people to do the same.
Thanks for listening to the Passionistas Project. Since we're not only business partners, but best friends and real-life sisters, we know how unique and truly special our situation is. We know so many solopreneurs, activists, women seeking their purpose, and more, who are out there doing it all on their own. They often tell us they wish they had what we have. So we've created a space for them and you to join our sisterhood, where trust, acceptance, and support are the cornerstones of our community. By joining, you become part of our family. We'll give you all of our sis tips on building meaningful relationships through the power of sisterhood, and all the tools you need to thrive in 3 key areas: business growth, personal development, and social impact. You'll learn from our panel of Power Passionistas, who are experts on topics like transformational leadership, letting go of perfectionism, the power of community, and so much more. You can connect with like-minded women and gender non-conforming, non-binary people who share your values and goals in chat spaces, at online Passionistas pajama parties, and virtual and in-person meetups. And you can register for our exclusive series of online courses designed to help you tap into your intuition, find your purpose, bring your mission to fruition, and integrate diversity, equity, and inclusion in every aspect of your plan. Be sure to visit thepassionistasproject.com to sign up for our free membership to join our worldwide sisterhood of passion-driven women who come to get support, find their purpose, and feel empowered to transform their lives and change the world. We'll be back next week with another Passionista who's defining success on her own terms and breaking down the barriers for herself and women everywhere. Until then, stay passionate.
This is the powerful new single from Daughtry. It's called Antidote.
I couldn't stop the rain when the hurricane was coming. Couldn't keep the pace
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.